Hello and welcome. Another edition of The Process, where each week, Coach Jeremy Fouts and myself, we talk about everything and anything that has to do with regard to the process as the high school athletes are beginning to prepare to not only get between the lines as a varsity athlete at the high school level, but also helping them prepare for their potential landing spot at the college level, no matter what sport, at any school across the country, any level or any division. Today, we are going to be joined by a very special guest, someone that I have known from my days of living in greater New Orleans, a tremendous family within Louisiana. Coach Tommy Moffitt has been at LSU as a strength coach there. He is now the director of strength and conditioning for Texas A&M football, owner of the Moffett method, which I refer lots of families to throughout the year. Coach Tommy, thank you so much for taking a few minutes to join us today.
Thank you, Walter. Thank you for having me on today.
You know, one of the things that I would like to kick off, and you and I have kind of discussed this a little bit, but the biggest question that parents and obviously athletes are having today is, you know, the older athletes, the high school guys are getting kicked to the curb. But in reality, it's not high school athletes that are getting kicked to the curb. It's those that have not truly prepared themselves for the rigor and the workload at the college level. So I would love to start with, you are father of 3 sons, all of which have played football and baseball and have had a passion for strength training. At what age do most high school athletes, or what age should they begin to prepare to learn the rigors of the weight room?
That's a really good question. And I usually, when asked that by a parent, I use baseball as an example. When my oldest son, Clay, was growing up, I wouldn't have waited until Clay was 16 or 17 to have him start swinging a bat or throwing a baseball. So what I did, and I'm going to give examples of what I did with my own son, who ended up, being a pitcher for LSU. When he was a kid, I constructed a set of like a barbell set out of plywood and a wooden dowel rod, because he was always coming in the weight room at LSU and playing with the weights. So I took some plywood and a jigsaw, and I made him some plates out of plywood. And I just put him in the backyard and he started playing with it. And then when he got bored of that, I went to Academy and purchased some dumbbells and like a little light barbell. It had some weights on the end, and I brought him home and I just stuck him under his bed. And my wife said, "What are you doing? Are you crazy?" I said, "No." She goes, "He's too young to start lifting weights." And I said, "I know, honey, but he's not too young to start playing with weights." And so I said, "I'm just going to leave him under the bed. He'll eventually find him, and he and his buddies can start playing with it." And that's ultimately what happened. And his best friend, Connor Whalen, was also a pitcher at Southern University in Baton Rouge. So here are 2 young boys who started playing with dumbbells and these light barbells when they were 6 or 7, 8 years old, somewhere in that area. And as he grew older and his interest in the barbell and the weight started to grow, then we started doing basic exercises. And I can't even remember the age. It was probably 9 or 10 years old. And we just started working on the motion of pressing a barbell and doing squats and deadlifts and other very simple exercises. Because what I wanted it to do is I wanted to teach him that training with a barbell is something that we can do our entire life. And it's not something that I have to do because I play baseball or I play football. And that is still my stance today. If I would have had a daughter and she were in gymnastics again, I wouldn't wait until she was 13 or 14 years old to start doing somersaults and flips. I would start her out early and teach her all of the technique that she needs to know as a gymnast, and then spend her years when she matures getting stronger and more powerful. And that's what I did with my three boys. They all won state championships in high school. Two of them went on to be very successful collegiate athletes, one in baseball and one in football. And we grew up playing with weights, having fun with it. And I taught them basic fundamental skills that they would need to know so that when they got to middle school or high school, it wouldn't be something that shocked them so bad that they never wanted to go in the weight room again. And I didn't want them to get sore, and I wanted to make sure that they were taught correctly before they ever got in that environment, to make sure that it wasn't too much when they finally started training with the high school coaches.
Yeah. Go ahead, Walter.
You know, one of the things that a lot of parents get intimidated by is, if I get too big, I'm going to slow down. I could injure my sons or my daughters can injure themselves. You know, they have a fear of weight. So what you're initially saying is starting early, even if it's body weight, just learning how to move weight.
Correct.
You know, so one of the key integral parts that you and I have discussed ad nauseum in the past is when athletes begin to turn that, what I call from that 12, 13-year-old year and into they're setting their sights in middle school into the high school level, they often look around the gym and they're intimidated, you know, with the amount of weight that the older guys are moving. Are there any basic exercises, as you alluded to, the squat, maybe the dumbbell press, the barbell press? Are there any basic exercises that the, you know, parents at home can kind of navigate, whether it's down in the basement or simple exercises at the YMCA, that athletes can begin to at least understand the basic movement patterns so that they can kind of get a little foundation built prior to, you know, maybe getting into that high school weight room?
Yes, sir. Great. Another really good question. So I developed this philosophy a long time ago that it's important to start with body weight first before you begin external resistance. So simple push-ups, sit-ups, chin-ups, body weight squats, and then jumping and sprinting. Jumping, skipping, sprinting are all very good activities. And jumping over obstacles, jumping on top of obstacles, jumping over a ditch, jumping or hopping and skipping across the baselines on a baseball field. And we actually, in our program, the Moffett method, we have programs that start with body weight and then they progress to kettlebells and resistance bands. And then it progresses more to dumbbells. And then eventually, over time, we get to barbells. And I think that is a good gradual progression, starting with the body weight exercises. And, you know, throughout those, well, anything that you can do with a barbell, you can do it better with dumbbells and kettlebells. And there's not a big difference in dumbbells and kettlebells. But we built our program around both of those in case you had one and not the other, because you can always substitute dumbbells for kettlebells and vice versa. But that's the progression that I follow, and I follow the same progression here at Texas A&M with our incoming freshmen. We evaluate them first with body weight activities, and then we switch to kettlebells, dumbbells, resistance bands, and eventually, and some are faster than other, we start handling barbells. And you can do the same exercises with kettlebells or dumbbells or even resistance bands that you can do with a barbell set. So that's how we start, and that's how we progress. And you want to, mimic a squat, some type of squat pattern, whether it be a front squat or a back squat, some type of pulling motion from the floor, whether it's a sumo deadlift or a conventional deadlift or a RDL. And then overhead pressing strength is something that is very important and often overlooked out of fear that, you might get hurt or it might impact your throwing motion or your shot in basketball. But pressing strength, especially for adolescents and young athletes, is critical. Now, as we start getting more sports specific in the, after the formative years from say 17 on up to our collegiate athletes here at A&M, you can start specializing a little bit, but when people start off, all they need are the basic fundamental exercises, and really early specialization in the weight room is very foolhardy activity because young men and young women need to develop as much strength and power as they can during the formative years, because they miss out on a lot of growth during those times if they're worried about specializing and perfecting some particular form of exercise or exercise program for a gymnast or for a baseball player or a pitcher or a quarterback. They have so much growth that they have to go through before they ever worry about any form of specialization in the weight room.
I got to ask you a question, Tommy. I love your philosophy behind, starting off with these younger kids as looking at weights is not a job. It's not something that, you're going to have to do this. This is something that, hey, here's some dumbbells, play with them. I love that, and I work with parents a lot in nutrition too. And a lot of times they're like, well, 10 or 11 years old, it's too early to teach them about the importance of protein or carbs or fats. We'll just let them eat what they want to eat. And then I always ask them the question, well, if 11's too early, when is the time to teach them about nutrition? Do we wait till they're 12?
Correct.
No, that's still too early. Oh, do we wait till they're 14? Do we wait till they're 15? So I have that same philosophy on nutrition as making sure they understand the importance of nutrition at a young age as well. What's two questions for you? How did you start teaching your own boys about nutrition? And the weights is powerful. We know that.
Yeah.
But we also know without nutrition. And then the second question is, how important do you as a strength coach work with the nutrition team there at A&M to making sure that, yes, your athletes are doing the work, but they're also getting fueled properly?
Great question. And I tell, especially when we're recruiting high school football players and when they get here as freshmen, I tell their parents, I tell them all the time, there's no magic pill, potion, or program that can replace good nutrition and great sleep habits.
Yes.
Our body becomes bigger and faster and stronger and more powerful, more dynamic, more mobile. It heals itself when I eat, and it heals itself. Carbohydrates, sugar, starches aren't going to help my muscles repair themselves after a hard workout or a hard practice, a hard training session, or some type of injury. If I hurt myself sliding in to second base, or if I get hit in the hip by a fastball, all of that requires protein and vitamins and minerals to repair itself. And so it's critical that young men, young women understand how important it is that I eat well. They'll also do better in school. They'll have more energy after school, they're going to perform at a higher level academically first and athletically second. And without all the different, just like magnesium, for example, one of the most important minerals that you could have, and it's, so good for, your brain and how well you sleep at night and how well you respond to stress, and both mental and physical stress. So it is critical that young men and young women learn to eat at a young age. And so my kids, especially my oldest son, Clay, loved Happy Meals as a child because they got a little gift. Well, as he started to mature, his liking for fast food just continued to grow. And I noticed when he was young that he was putting on some, unnecessary fat. And you don't want to worry about your children being cut and ripped and shredded and all this, because they need fat in their diet, but it's the good kinds of fats. And so there was this documentary on McDonald's. It's called Super Size Me, and it was real popular when Clay was a little kid. And so one day I just said, "Hey, Clay, you want to sit down and watch some TV with Dad?" And he goes, "Sure." So I turned it on, and he may have been 10 years old. And we watched it, and I'm telling you, he still to this day remembers that documentary, and he eats so well, and he's fanatical about his eating now. So, and he's a big outdoorsman, and he does a lot of hunting out west, and he fishes a lot too. So he's quite the outdoorsman, and living in Louisiana helps it. But, his family, and including my new grandson, his wife and Clay, they only eat wild caught proteins.
Yeah.
So whether it's caribou or elk or white-tailed deer or wild pigs, and he fishes, and he's got freezers at home. It's just stocked with fresh fish and that he's caught offshore, and turtle meat. And people say, well, he's one of those Cajuns, but he's not getting a lot of the stuff that is in our foods today. And he's fanatical about nutrition, and has always been since he was 10, 11, or 12 years old, and eats incredibly well. And all of this stuff, you take away the athletics, and you can take away all the athletic preparation you want. You still got to exercise. You still got to have some form of activity in your life where you push yourself and you raise your heart rate level and you overcome external resistance, whether you're carrying logs or carrying rocks. And you have to eat well, and you have to consume quality foods in the correct proportions, or, you're going to, not live a healthy lifestyle. So I'm fanatical about it. I think everyone in my family is fanatical about it, and none of us are athletes anymore. It's just the right way to live.
Yeah. Longevity.
Yeah. And so I'm fanatical about it.
Yeah. I've got two twins I started working with. They're juniors in high school. And one of them had 3% body fat. He had an immune disorder, and the mom and dad had took him everywhere to try to get him to gain weight. They was very little. They was 115, 118 pounds when I started working with them a couple months back. And she called me the other day. I'm glad you said what you said about the 6-pack. She goes, well, now they're like 145, and I've got them on the right portion of macros from protein, carbs, and fats. And she goes, he's got a little wrinkle around his stomach. I said, that's the best compliment I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah.
And I say that because I deal with a lot, believe it or not, these teenage boys, they want to have a 6-pack because they see a 22-year-old on Instagram, and they think that their body fat needs to be 5-6%. And when you're getting certified in sports nutrition, they teach you that's the biggest no-no. You don't want anything below 13, 12, or 13%. You got to have good, healthy hormones in order to develop great. So I love that you said that comment, because these athletes have got to have the fuel. They have to have good hormone health. They have to have good bone density and making sure they're getting all the proteins and carbs and fats. And also, your son and I will be good friends, because I got 3 freezers full of wild game in my in my garage right now. We do the same thing out west and go down to Louisiana and catch tuna every year. So, but getting the right proteins, carbs, and fats, it pairs so good with weight training. You can train. A lot of training is very important, but you got to fuel correctly as well.
Yeah, fats are important for all your growth hormones, testosterone, estrogen, all of that. It doesn't matter, male, female.
Yep.
You've got to have fats or cholesterol, which is a bad word, but you've got to have that to make steroids and, the type that's in your body. And then fat is your best source of energy. Right. We make our athletes consume a certain amount of fat each day. We feed them fatty foods because they've got to have that as a source of energy. And when you're eating properly, and like you said, the macros, if your macros are in check and you're eating the right amount of carbohydrates and fat combined, and it's not too much carbohydrates, but it's a balance of carbs, fat, and protein, you're going to have much more energy for long-term work bouts, like a baseball game or a football game or a softball game or a swim meet or a track meet. You need a tremendous amount of fat for a day, for a high school track meet. I used to coach high school track, and I'd be coaching and I'd be starving before that meet was over with. So
yes.
One of the biggest topics, Coach, that a lot of high school families are discussing is, it's skewed to the older athlete, and they want to understand it really isn't skewed to the older athlete. They're the better prepared athlete. So when these athletes are in high school, over and above the nutrition, like for instance, you've talked about sleep. It's a free, that's free. You should be worried, getting enough sleep. Also, from the creatine perspective, it's the most misunderstood supplement. Can you talk about those high school athletes beginning like at the freshman and sophomore year, not only from a nutritional perspective, but understanding the routines of sleep, supplementation, as well as the strength training can put them closer to being on par and equal to the current college athletes, so that when they do step on campus, they do get that opportunity to participate. Can you talk a little bit about the supplementation component? It's not magic, but it does have a role. It does play a role with regard to nutrition.
Yeah. So, we get asked a lot by our players about supplements, and we have a program now here at A&M. We tell our athletes they don't have to buy anything, because when they're going into the supplement stores and stuff, sometimes there's people there that are worried more about what their commission is going to be than versus, servicing the young man or young lady about what they're supposed to use. And so we have an extensive nutrition and supplementation program here. Because the difference between winning and losing is very small. And we need our guys to be in a state of optimal functioning every day, because we train, it's compulsory. We train year round. And now athletes are getting paid, and the stakes are a lot higher. And I find that, our athletes, now that they're being paid, are more motivated than they've ever been before. So first of all, we always do In fact, when you enroll here, when you show up, you're given a physical that is just like what they do in the NFL. They have doctors and nutritionists and all the therapists in a room, and you go through an extensive physical with blood work and everything. So they look. And, you know, one of the most surprising things is the vitamin deficiencies that our incoming freshmen have as far as the B vitamins and vitamin D. And so that's the first thing. And then they look at iron to check for anemia as well. So believe it or not, we medically prescribe vitamins for our student athletes when they come in, because a lot of them come in with severe vitamin deficiencies that cause them to have soft tissue injuries and not heal from soft tissue injuries. And so B12 is one that is very important, but the B vitamins as a whole, and then vitamin D, and then also fish oils or omega-3 fatty acids. So those are three things that all of our athletes are checked for when and iron. And then so they prescribe them pharmaceutical grade vitamins until they get them up to baseline of where they're supposed to be. And then they switch over to an NSA certified product, which we have to use, because if one of those were to buy something at a health food store that was contaminated during the manufacturing process with something that's banned, then they would lose a year of eligibility. Right. So that's pretty serious. So we only use vitamins that have been third-party tested, or any supplement unless it's been third-party tested. And it's a good practice to do it anyway. So then we do a diet analysis. We look at what they eat. And a lot of these kids are finicky eaters. Some have never eaten vegetables once in their life. We have a lot of kids that have grown up eating fast food because, mom and dad, weren't big cookers, and they didn't come from the South where they cook, we look at the macros, we adjust those. Protein, believe it or not, all these athletes are high carbohydrate consumers, low fat consumers, and low protein consumers. And I mean, we have guys that are missing anywhere from 100 to 150 grams of protein a day out of their diet. And so, yeah, and it's just all carbohydrates, and bad fat meals. So we have to adjust that. And then, one of the things that we, want our athletes to use is creatine monohydrate, just simple creatine monohydrate, because, and I tell parents, and I tell our players, and I tell our coaches that creatine does so much more for the brain compared to what it does to the rest of the body. You should, and myself, my creatine is right here beside my fish oils. I take it every day. It's one of the most important. Yeah, there it is. Simple creatine monohydrate. And it's one of the most important things that we consume, especially for the aging population and women, and not just aging women, but all young women and adults need creatine monohydrate. And the reason is because we don't have enough good quality proteins in our meals anymore, and we're low in creatine monohydrate. And if we all ate, 10 pounds of raw tuna or fresh caught Gulf tuna or red meat, elk, caribou, whitetail deer, we wouldn't have this problem. But creatine monohydrate is powerful for the brain. It's good for mood disorders. It's a preventive measure for all types of neurodegenerative diseases. It's a prophylactic that will help protect you, along with omega-3 fatty acids, and primarily the EPA fatty acids for concussion syndrome or concussion protocol, So it's critical that you supplement creatine monohydrate, not because you're an athlete, but because your general health practices, whether you're heading a ball in soccer or because those are, micro contacts with the head, heading a soccer ball. It doesn't matter. Bicycle wrecks, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, karate, boxing, football, all of those sports could cause some form of concussive injuries, or subconcussive blows are just as bad. Repeated subconcussive blows are bad. So it's important that you supplement with creatine monohydrate, and there's other products out there that work as well. And I could talk all day on it. But yeah, it's important that you're eating well first, and then supplementing to make sure that you're not low in vitamin D, vitamin K, vitamin B12, your fatty acids, iron, etc. On and on and on and on. Yeah. So much.
Yeah. I'm 100% agreeing with you, Coach. When I build meal plans for athletes, I don't only, build the plan to make sure the macros are aligned correctly. I usually start them off, depending on the age of the athlete, about 1.25 grams of protein per body pound. But I also build them a macronutrient analysis report. Mm-hmm. And I'll send that to them, and we'll go over it, how much calcium they're getting in their foods, phosphorus, mm-hmm. magnesium. Sure. 100% agreeing upon that. Most of these athletes do not get the macronutrients. Macronutrients determine how you look, but the macronutrients determine how you feel. And that's something that's extremely important. I've heard you say on the mental side, I've heard you make a comment that the mind gives up before the body ever does. Yeah. And I'm working with a lot of these younger athletes on a daily basis, and I teach them that nutrition is powerful paired with the weight room. It's going to push you and make you more physical to perform at a higher level. But I also tell them the mental side, what I love, it unlocks the full potential. When you get in that daily routine and promising yourself, I'm going to eat my food, I'm going to hit my weights, I'm going to drink my water, I'm going to hydrate, get my sleep, all those things. But I want to see what your take is, because I'm big on the mental side. And I've heard you say that comment that really has been intriguing for me, and I'd love for you to explain that to the audience.
Yeah, so the way I say it is, you give up mentally before you're ever really physically challenged. And, that is why you have these, I'm going to talk about extreme athletes first. There's people that run 100-mile foot races. The Tour de France covers over 1,000 miles in 21 days. It's like 1,500 miles in 21 days. I would have guys that would show up late to workouts because they couldn't find a parking place, or just crazy stuff. And my brother and his wife, when they were 50 years old, they walked from Springer Mountain, Georgia to Mount Kahad, Maine, along the Appalachian Trail, and, averaged like 10 or 11 miles of walking a day throughout that journey. It took them 7.5 months to complete the trail. And you can't walk across campus. So people limit themselves physically or mentally first, and then over time, our bodies, because there's a thing called the SAID principle, specific adaptations to impose demand. And if you challenge yourself mentally to go a little farther every day, you would be amazed of what you can achieve in just a little bit of time. Laird Hamilton, and some people may know Laird Hamilton, but he married Gabrielle Reese, the great volleyball player. Laird Hamilton, in a book, said that an athlete's engine, or the size of an athlete's engine, is developed during adolescence. And I'm a big believer in that. And we get football players here that are 5-star athletes and they have zero work capacity because they've never pushed themselves to that point where they just don't think they can take another step. Now, that isn't something that you do every day in athletics, especially when it comes to endurance training. Because especially if you're in the speed and power sport. But even that, like building up resiliency to high speed sprinting, is something that we have to do here with our young players. We have players that can't sprint more than 1 rep a week when they first get here, because if they do, their hamstrings blow up. Coach, my hamstrings are tight. And I'm like, we sprinted 20 yards yesterday. That was it, because we track everything. We can tell you whether you're sprinting or it's an explosive yard or activity yardage. We know all of these metrics. And we have guys that get sore from 20 yards of sprinting. And a sore hamstring is a weak hamstring. So we have to build up resiliency to one of the most natural things that a human does. And it's one reason why we have survived on this planet as long as we have, is because when we saw trouble, we ran from it. And the faster you were, the longer you would survive on this earth. But nowadays, people can't do it. And so we have to push guys to sprint, believe it or not, in a sport like football, because they're afraid to sprint because they might injure their hamstring. And so there's little wins and victories every day. And I tell them that, no one's going to die from sprinting. No one has ever died from sprinting 10 yards. It's not going to happen. But we actually progress our athletes when they first get here. They sprint 5 yards, and then they sprint 10 yards, and then they sprint 15, and then they sprint 20. And we have to build up a capacity for high speed sprinting in a sport like college football, because they've never done it, and they've never done it over time. And generally speaking, for most competitive high school athletes, unless you run track and field, the only time they sprint is in competition, because they're worried about saving themselves for competition. And then they get hurt in the most important work of their week. And I was sprinting from first to second, or I hit a triple, and and because it's a curvilinear run, a lot of players in high school baseball hurt their knees and hurt their hamstrings running bases because they're not accustomed to doing it full speed. So that is something that has to be done. You build up that resiliency through saying to myself, I can do this. We have to teach positive self-talk here. I can do it. I can do it. I can do it. I got this. I can do it. And it's mental toughness. And people say that you can't develop mental toughness, or you shouldn't develop mental toughness, but you should. And it's something that has to be done if you're going to compete at an elite level in any sport. And I'll give you a good example. So some of you may know, I know Walter knows Coach JT Curtis. Coach Curtis is the winningest coach in all of football. He's won more football games than anyone at any level. And I had the honor and the blessing to work for him for 6 years right out of college. And we had a quarterback who was he was the heir apparent quarterback. And he was a really good athlete, and he was missing spring football practice to play in the state golf tournament. And me and some of the other coaches were upset that he wasn't going to be at football practice. Instead, he was playing in the state golf tournament. And Coach Curtis, I never will forget this. He goes, and JT called me Bubba. He said, Bubba, I can tell you don't play a lot of golf. I know that. But you've never stood on a putting green and had to putt for par in order to advance to the next round of play. And I know that when he's standing up there putting, it's just as meaningful and just as stressful as it would be calling a play in a football game. And that's something that I didn't understand when I was young, but now I do. Whether you're putting or you're serving a volleyball in a state championship game, or you're taking the winning free throw, or you're going into overtime as a wrestler, all of those activities build mental toughness, or require mental toughness. And that is something that has to be taught as young men and women. And there's no way around it.
It's good stuff.
One of the big questions that I remember from the last time you and I chatted was, how do I work with Coach Tommy? How do I work with Coach Moffett? And, you know, I always tell parents you should just reach out. But obviously you have people within your organization that kind of handle that while you're working at A&M. Can you explain to families how they can reach out to become part of the Moffett method?
Yes.
Particularly the high school athletes that are really looking for that edge.
Yes. So I'll give you a little rundown for those that aren't familiar with it. We have an online customized coaching program, or strength, speed, and conditioning program for young athletes and colleges too. We have small schools and junior college, Division III schools. We actually had an SEC strength coach that subscribed to our program just to see what we were doing. And he called me up and told me, he says, I've purchased your Moffett method because I just want to see what you're doing. But all you have to do is pick up the phone and call, and I'm going to give you the number. It's 343-451-6957. Again, that's 343-451-6957, and someone will answer that phone. What we do, we sit down, we talk to the client or prospective client, we find out what their goals are, and then we devise a program that we send. We have an app, and you receive that program every morning at 5 a.m., the updated program. We have 52 weeks of programming for all sports, for general strength development, and as far up as specialized for all sports, baseball, football, basketball, you name it. And we have it available. And you load it on your mobile device, and we have over 600 videos that demonstrate all of the drills and exercises in our program. You can contact your coach through the app or via the phone. And we have podcasts that you can listen to for continuing education, and on and on and on. I mean, it's a wonderful program. In fact, we had a recruit here just 2 weeks ago with his high school coach. And he told me that it's Viger High School in Mobile. It's in Mobile County in South Alabama. And he said that they started the Moffett method 2 years ago, and it changed their program for the better. And so we're recruiting some of their athletes, and it would be neat to be able to sign and coach a young man that, you know, got to where he is today using our program. We've had state champions, national champions, the consensus high school national championship Catholic high baseball team used our program. They were the consensus national champions.
Coach Bass.
Yeah, Coach Brad Bass. And the LSU Eunice Bengals were junior. 1 year we had the Division II junior college national champions and the consensus high school national championship baseball teams using our program in the same year. So we have it for all sports, and yeah, give them a shout. Either if you call that number, either Rob, Matt should answer the phone. We have Rob and Matt that are there for you. We will assign you your own coach. and he or she will be your coach until you move on.
I want to emphasize a couple of things, and I know Coach Jeremy has a great product for you. A lot of college coaches now are using the Hydrate product because the kids love the taste. But I do want to emphasize, I have two boys that have used the Moffett method when they both started, and coincidentally, they're both from Texas. But when they both started, they were approximately 170 pounds. They were sophomores in high school. When they graduated high school, they were in that 215, 220 mode. They were physically strong enough. They're both at Division I baseball schools, and they both attribute that to the Moffett method and learning properly at a younger age to prepare not only from a physical strength, but from a nutrition perspective as well. And so there's more to the Moffett method, and there's also sprinting, and there's more to the Moffett method than just moving weights. But Jeremy, I know hydration plays a big role with Corvive, and I know that's a product that you feel strongly about for Coach Tommy as well.
Absolutely, Coach Tommy. I'll be sending you down some free samples today of our pink lemonade and our cherry limeade. We have an NSF certified for sport. We sell to a lot of MLB teams, a lot of D1 programs. And so I'm going to be sending that down to you today. You're going to love the ratio of magnesium, potassium, sodium levels. We only use organic sugar cane as well. So I'm going to be sending that down to you today. And I just want to say it was an honor and privilege to spend time with you. Not every day that you get to spend time with someone that's won 3 national championships at the SEC level, and just what you're doing for young men and young women across the country. My passion is youth athletes, and I love it. And I can see you have that same passion of taking that young men and pushing them to be the best they can be. So it's an honor and privilege to spend time with you today.
Thank you, Jeremy. I appreciate that. Thank you.
And Tommy, give my best to the entire family. Stay a little bit in contact with Aaron. And I want to thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you, Coach. I appreciate that very much.
Athletes, electrolytes matter, but you got to choose the right electrolytes. If you look at the sugars, 34 grams, the dyes, all the things that's not good for you in this product, this is a hype product. If you look here at the electrolytes made by Corvive, it's got the right amount of magnesium, sodium, potassium, zinc, kosher salt. It's got vitamin C to help with the immune system. I'm telling you, if you want to stay on the field, you want to perform at your best, you want to recover well, this is the product that you need to choose to fuel your body.